Yud Aleph, Mishnah Beis. Says the Mishnah, Keitzat. In what way do the Chachamim, as in the previous Mishnah, say that if a person transfers an item from a Rishus HaYochid to a Rishus HaYochid through the Rishus HaRabim, in what way, in what scenario are they going to be potter? So the Mishnah explains. Shtei Gzus Terois Zu Keneged Zu. You have two balconies opposite each other. B'Rishus HaRabim, in the Rishus HaRabim, HaMoishid v'Hazorik Mizu Lezu potter. If you transfer an item, or you throw an item from one to the other, you're potter. So for example, you've got a Rishus HaRabim going down the middle over here, a big Rishus HaRabim, and you've got a building on one side and the other side, and each building has a balcony coming out of it. And these balconies have the status of a Rishus HaYochid, they've got the dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid. So imagine you've got a balcony over here, you've got a big Rishus HaRabim over here, and another balcony over there. And a person transfers an item, a long beam or something like that, from one balcony to the other one, or he throws something from one Rishus HaYochid, from one balcony to the other one. Says the Mishnah, he's going to be potter. Why is he going to be potter? So the Bar Tanura explains, has at the end of that first Dibah HaMaskil of Shtei Gzus Terois, potter shelemotzinu zrika v'hishata b'meleches HaMishkan. We have no precedent. We do not find in the meleches HaMishkan any zrika, any throwing, or any hishata, any transferring mirishus hayochid rishus hayochid from one rishus hayochid to another one. The roch of rishus harabim mafsik beineihen, with the width of rishus harabim in between. So we don't find a precedent in the Mishkan of a transfer taking place from one rishus hayochid to another rishus hayochid across a rishus harabim. Fine. Continues the Mishnah. However, hayushtehen b'dyuta achas. If these two balconies were in one row, in one line, then hamoishet chayev v'hazoyrik potter. Then it would be different. For example, you've got your Rishus HaRabim, and instead of having one balcony on this side and one on this side, rather you've got your Rishus HaRabim and you've got one balcony on this side and another one further along the Rishus HaRabim. And if a person is moshit from one to the other, he would be chayev. Why? Because that's exactly how the Levium carried in the Mishkan. For Zrika, you'd be potter, we'll explain why soon. But for Hoshata, you'd be chayev, because that's exactly how the Levium transported it. And that's what the Mishnah carries on to say. That was the work of the Levium. Shtei agolos zu achazu. In the midbar, they would have two wagons. Each wagon in the midbar, the Levium's wagons, which they used to transport the items of the Mishkan, would be a Rishus HaYochid, and they would be lined up in the Rishus HaRabim along the length of the Rishus HaRabim. They would transfer, they would hand over one item from the wagon to the wagon in front of it. But they wouldn't throw it. Why wouldn't they throw it? So the Bar Tanura says because the items were too heavy. You couldn't throw these enormous beams, and therefore, since there's no precedent of doing a zrika in the Avodas HaMishkan, in the Mishkan, therefore, if you throw an item from one Rishus HaYochid, from one balcony to the one ahead of it, you're potter, because again, you don't find a precedent. The Tferes Yisrael says they didn't throw it because of the kedusha of these items, it's disrespectful to throw them, but either way, there was no precedent for doing a zrika of an item, either across or even down a Rishus HaRabim. However, for Hoshata, there was no precedent across, but there was a precedent of transferring of one item to the other, from Rosh HaYochid to the Rosh HaYochid ahead of it, because that's exactly the avoda of the Levium. That's how they would transfer the beams in the Mishkan, from one wagon to the wagon ahead of it. Fine. Continues and concludes the Mishnah. Chulyas habar v'asela. A chulyas habar, a bar is a pit. A person in a Rishus HaRabim digs a pit, and with the earth that he digs out, he sort of makes a sort of a boundary, a little sort of mound around this burr, and together the height of the burr and of the mound is 10 tefachim. In other words, the burr is, for example, 7 tefachim deep, but the mound of earth which surrounds this burr is, say, 3 tefachim high. So together they make a height of 10 tefachim. Alternatively, v'hasela, you've got a rock which is 4 by 4 tefachim and 10 tefachim high in a Rishus HaRabim. Shein gvoya asara, there are 10 tefachim high. V'rachban arba, they're 4 by 4 tefachim wide. Hanoitel mehen, v'hanoitel al gabon is chayev. They have the status of Rishus HaYochid, and therefore, if you're noitel mehem, if you take an item from the bar or from this cellar and you place it into the Rosh Hashanah, you have done a classic Issa D'Oraisa of Hotzah on Shabbos. You've done a Hakira from a Rosh Hashanah and you've done a Hanoch in a Rosh Hashanah. Or the Hanois Nagaman, if you take an item from a Rosh Hashanah and you place it on the cellar or into the bar, again you've done a Hotzah of D'Oraisa. Pachas Mikain is Potter. If, however, the height of this cellar or the dimensions are lacking, are smaller than this, i.e. they do not qualify as a Rosh Hashanah, they will rather be a Carmelis, then you're Potter. Because as we mentioned earlier, carrying from Rosh Hashanah to a Carmelis or the other way around is mutter min Torah, but it's only osam drabonon. So therefore the Mishnah says it's Potter. If, however, the cellar would be less than 3 tefachim high, or indeed the bar would be less than 3 tefachim, then it wouldn't even have the status of a Carmelis, it would be a Mokum Patur, and therefore there'd be no Issa Drabonon even, and therefore it wouldn't say Potter. So specifically we're talking about where it has the status of a Carmelis. That is the end of Mishnah base.